You get a lot of BS, highfalutin terminology for people trying to sound smart. And at the end of the day, like it's just real estate, right? So, but it's fun and it's life changing.
Welcome back, investor, to another episode of Passive Income Adventures. If you're new to the show, my name is Emma Powell, and this is the show where we peel back the layers of passive income, like just removing the BS, figuring out how to get it, what to do with it, how to design a lifestyle that includes it so that you can retire early without retiring early from life, so to speak, like how to find a new purpose. So our guest today is Justin Mosley. Now, Justin, I love your story. You're just a high achiever, hustling, and just figuring it out and making it work. And you're spreading the gospel of how short-term rentals can help to build up wealth. So I personally do not really like short-term rentals. And so I think it's going to be an interesting conversation, like how you decide if you should go into this actively or in my case, having tried it out. I like to be passive. So thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. Like no BS, like real talk. That is what I'm all about. So if I'm into investing, you get a lot of BS, highfalutin terminology for people trying to sound smart. And at the end of the day, like it's just real estate, right? So, but it's fun and it's life changing. So happy to talk about it for sure.
Yeah. Thanks. So are you calling in from Florida?
I am South Florida, Jupiter.
Awesome. Yeah, we just spent 3 months in Orlando last year. We were traveling full time with our kids and decided to go see if we thought Florida was the place for us, and apparently it has too many bugs for my kids.
That's fair. It's funny. And you speak of lifestyle, my wife and I, and we took the kids out to Italy, waited till school started, pulled them out for 2 weeks, and then went out there for 10 days, went to Florence, Sicily. For me, traveling is like the best education I ever got. Trying to give that to my kids, especially early, is just awesome. So.
Yeah. My kids don't really traveling. I think that you have to travel before you can figure that out. But one thing I like about the show is we talk a lot about lifestyle and lifestyle design. So at the beginning, when we're just chit chatting about what we're doing, most podcasts, you hear that, you're like, oh my goodness, get to the point. But I feel like on this show, it's the point. It's what do you want your life to look like? How do you want to live your life? And how do you facilitate your income to be able to get what you want, both time wise and money wise? We all know wealthy people who are too busy to spend it. We all know people who have big dreams if they don't have enough money to make it happen. So balancing the time and the money is really key here. Again, if this is the first time the listeners listening, we usually do like a past, present, and future type of format. Hear your backstory, Justin, where you came from, some of the struggles, pivot points, or realizations, insights that you had, what you're working on right now that you basically have spent time crafting, honing your craft to become an expert at, and then we'll chat more about the future of both the business and your personal goals, your lifestyle design. So would you kick us off with introducing yourself and tell us your Superman origin story and how you got from where you started to where you are today?
Oh, cool. Yeah. So I don't know if it's, Superman-ish, but yeah, I'm from Baltimore. And if you've ever been there before, but I'm super appreciative of growing up there. But I'm always honest where I would say it's an absolute shithole.
Yes.
And,
One of my
and
partners grew up in Baltimore. He
yeah, and
lived there
looks,
anymore.
and mentality and stuff. And fair, there's just a lot of great people there, but it is definitely one of those places where it is not, where are you going in life and stuff. I
Wow.
never knew that kind of stuff growing up. But the cool thing is that as I got older and started thinking about what I wanted to do and talking about, one of the things I saw as a viable option was the military. And I was
Mhm.
actually one of the few people that went into the Navy, and I did it purely because I'm like, all right, I can actually travel, and I didn't want to get sent to the middle of Mississippi. Ended up doing that, and I was fortunate enough to really do a world cruise right after I got to my ship in Virginia. So we had Brazil, Chile, ended up getting stationed in Japan for 2 years, Australia, Singapore, like the whole nine. So that kind of started my kind of traveling journey one, and really when I started thinking about what do I want my life to look like moving forward, especially out of the military. That was never going to be a 20-year guy, but I really looked at it as a stepping stone to get to the next kind of point in life.
Yeah, it's so important to have those early experiences, I think, to just tell you the direction you're going. So it reminds me of something I think I heard on NPR a couple of years ago, and they were talking about the culture in a place like Baltimore where nobody was asking you, what do you want to do with your life? And it struck me because the guys were talking about how it breeds a culture of you do whatever it takes to keep this thing together. And they were even talking about it goes so far as to break the law, that they were willing to do whatever it took to take care of their family and this kind of work ethic that comes from that. And the guy was, he said, sometimes we just lack a little direction in how to legitimately do whatever it takes. Cause sometimes we're off in the dark land of doing whatever it takes. And we think that we're doing a good job and we think that we're doing it right because we're so willing to do whatever it is, whether it's dangerous or illegal or whatever. So can you share some insight on that and how that may have shaped you growing up to just be like, I don't like where I'm from. Nobody asked me about my future, but also developing that work ethic of I got to figure this out.
I tell you what, like that is a super interesting question. No one's ever asked me anything like that, but I think that's largely true, right? Everybody's experience can be slightly different, but I'll can speak for my own, right? So my upbringing really was shaped by not really having a dad growing up, right? And then my mom actually ended up going to prison when I was
Oh,
in
wow.
school and stuff, right? And ironically, I didn't have a bad childhood, right? I
Right.
think I've always looked at the world comparatively, and when I look at a lot of people that I grew up around, like kids who are in group homes or in really bad situations, I didn't want for things per se,
Mhm.
but I think what I noticed, especially later on in life, as I reflected on what I wanted, I became acutely aware of like outcomes, and I think I started to model my life around if I don't want X outcome, I can't have the behaviors of the people around me. And to your point, it's not necessarily always about like people are bad people, right? I think we're all, and I think that's why it's so important to the company you keep and always constantly trying to elevate not only yourself, but the people around you is that everybody's a product of the environment or situation they're in. So if you're not around people that had the mentality of like, oh, I can do all these like really amazing things or go to these amazing places, the likelihood of you stepping outside of that is pretty slim. Unless you're just a complete outlier or a contrarian where you're just like, screw you guys, I'm gonna
Yeah.
do my own thing, which is always, I think I am a little bit like that and stuff. But then to speak to your work ethic, yeah, when you know what, suffering looks like, whether it's you or the people around you, I think, especially on my journey, when you talk about real estate investing and the quote unquote stress and stuff that's involved in it, for me, I don't see it as a big deal where it's like taking a risk, a calculated risk, but still a risk to buy a property or execute. Like I always look at the worst case scenario and it's not that big of a deal to me. And I realize that my perspective or perception of things is probably very different than most. Don't think it's unique at all, but it just intuitively is with me where if I want to have an incredible life, like I mentioned before, I have 4 kids, a beautiful wife that likes really nice things. And I'm willing to do what it takes and take those risks to give that life to them and enjoy it.
And you're about like if something's good for you, even though it's hard, you should do it. Almost how would you describe that philosophy? I call it get over yourself philosophy. If you know something hard needs to get done, you go figure out how to make it work. But I don't do hard things on purpose. Like I don't go do something just because it's hard. So how do you fall into that spectrum there of your personal philosophy of hard work?
Now we're getting deep here. Jeez, like I didn't realize. Like no, these are great questions, and it's actually things that I think about a lot. I like to think I'm a pretty introspective person, and just primarily because I'm very much outcome focused, right?
Mhm.
So whatever something is required to do to get the outcome that you want, it just even if it's hard, like why wouldn't you do it? And I realized that very early on, right? So whether it's staying in shape, it started off, and I'm always honest about this, from vanity, right? I went into the military, lift weights every day, primarily because I was out in the sea for months at a time, for hours and hours, and it was just to look good. But now 4 kids, getting older and stuff like that, I still get up at 4:30 every day and work out because I want to have energy to not only perform in my business, but also spend time with my kid. And my goal is when my kids have kids, like I want to roll around with them the way I do with them when they're little. So it's super easy to me to say, okay, staying in shape, trying to be healthy. And believe me, it's not like I don't have a cheeseburger and stuff like that. Like I
Yeah.
eat candy, but the consistency of just doing it every day, even when I don't feel like doing it, like just makes sense to me. So I'm just willing to do it. And I think we live in a society now where it's so easy to complain or blame other people. Even if that's true, in my mind, it doesn't matter, right? If something is happening to you and it's not your fault, like your job is still to get through it or figure out a solution to it. So I just always take that approach. And it's almost like that, no matter what, it's my responsibility to do what I need. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. So even if something's not your fault, it's still your responsibility. And some of the circumstances you described of not having a dad around or your mom going to prison, like those things, you didn't cause that, but it became your responsibility to deal with it because that's what you got. And having a philosophy, how do you avoid the life happens to me attitude that so many people in a tough situation grow up with? Because some of the most optimistic and positive people I've ever met in my entire life actually had terrible, like you said, you didn't have a bad childhood, but some bad childhood stuff. And somehow they're able to say, I can't live like this the rest of my life. I have to develop a good attitude, optimism, hard work, and know that I can take responsibility for these things that happen to me and then go out and make things happen.
Yeah, I think it's that, right? And I'm not going to pretend and say it didn't suck growing up, and it was like sharp grade and stuff like that. But it's I look back on it now, and I look at it almost with I wouldn't have it any other way because it almost shaped me into the person that I am. That I'm able to deal with things in a way that everything's comparative, right? And I don't mean comparative, and I don't compare myself or my life to other people, but like when I think about things that are hard now relative to things in my past I've experienced, like it's not even the same thing, right? So I always tell people that if you came up rough, and I notice this a lot in immigrants as well, especially being down in South Florida, like people that come from other countries and stuff, like they tend to have really hard work ethics because they know what the outcome of not doing anything or going back to their country and real like survival looks like. And I think that's a superpower because you could leverage that. And
Yeah.
I just think it's something that I wish more people would tap into because it just makes life easier when you just take on responsibility and say, hey, you're just outcome and the outcome or not situation problem, but like outcome focused versus or solution focused versus worrying about problem. Like complaining about problems is not going to help you. So what's the point in putting energy towards it?
I do struggle with that. Like it's a very conscious thing that take my mind and focus on only things I can control. But I'm also super picky about the hard things I do because if I just go make everything hard, then I feel like I can't really go as far as I can with the things that really matter. So
Yeah.
I call myself lazy, actually. This high achiever, but also pretty lazy because of things that I'm really going to go to the moon for. I'm very selective with just a few things that I'm willing to do that for. So I have the time, bandwidth, energy, whatever you want to call it. Do you have certain things? Are you an 80-20 kind of guy? Or do you have certain things you're like, that is not worth it? I'm sure some people love it, but
Yeah. I always take the position of it always boils down to your true priorities in life, right? I think, whether and the simplest one is like exercising and losing weight, right? If you don't care more about whether it be driven by being healthy or looking good in with your shirt off or in a bikini or whatever the case may be, if you actually care about that more than the immediate gratification of eating candy or a burger and everything, stuff that I like too, right? But or in working out, you're always going to default to the thing that you care about more. And I always think it just comes down to a priority thing. And people say, "Oh, I want X, Y, and Z," but if you truly want it, you'll be willing to do that quote unquote hard thing to actually get you to that outcome. So I think it just always boils down to what do you actually care about in life, and then your behaviors are going to be a reflection of that.
yeah. And making yourself actually care about something rather than just thinking you're supposed to care about something.
100%.
That's
This
so
happens a lot, right? There are people that are out in the street protesting about stuff they've never even heard of before up until just angry and shit. If you really cared, some may, most people don't. I stand on that for sure.
Yeah, my son has a form of autism called demand avoidance, and it's basically like a pathological level of you can't make me do that, and I can't even make myself do that. So, watching him become an adult and really have to say these are the only things that are actually important to me. It's not very many things, and then he'll be willing to go do the hard thing, but that kind of sense of I'm not doing that is it's debilitating in a sense, but it's also taught me like he really goes hard after those couple of things that he's identified. Like I actually care about this stuff. So I think that a lot of high achievers sometimes don't ever ask themselves that question and just they
Yeah.
just everything that's hard, they're gonna do all the hard things.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely don't do that at all and stuff. Like I would really say like the things that really important to me are like my physical wellness, most importantly, my family, and then actually
Mhm.
building a business. But the business is really driven by my love and support for my family. So
Mhm.
I know for a fact that the way I am with my kids, my wife and stuff is a direct relationship with like how I grew up, which ironically, I went for years thinking I wouldn't have any kids, wouldn't ever get married and stuff because I didn't really see the value of family because I didn't really I had family around. But once my grandmother died and then my mom went to jail, everybody just for money, which is like a couple $1,000, broke up like a whole family and stuff like that, which is like
Oh, boy.
crazy to say. But that's the norm for a lot of people. That's why I don't think I'm anything unique. Like there are millions of people that have experienced that exact same thing. But that shaped me in a way that once I started having kids, that became something that I saw as precious. And I wanted to make sure that my kids always knew how much I cared about them. And I was wanted to do and make them proud. So there's ego and draw in it as well, because I want my kids to grow up like proud of their dad and knowing that
Right.
he's doing what he needs to do to be around and stuff. So I use
Yeah,
all those
it's the
things
same
to
thing you hear.
drive
Let's
me in
talking
the
about
direction I'm
the
going.
Superman origin story. You probably heard this before. It's like the same tough time that Superman went through to become who he was. The Joker also went through that. And he let it turn him into a horrible person, whereas the difficulties that somebody's going to experience on the superhero side, they let those difficulties turn them into a superhero. And we get that choice. Which
Yeah.
way do we want to go with this? And just choosing to say, I want something better for my life. And so let's shift gears a little bit to the business side, the origin story. So you joined the military, you got to travel, you got a taste of what you want life to be like, some time to just think about what you want. We don't really think of the military as an opportunity to do a lot of have time to yourself to be able to think. But how were you able to get that in and just really think about what do I want my life to be like? And this is pretty cool. I'm going to all these places. And where did you find that early on, that introspection to make those kinds of decisions?
Yeah, I mean, sitting out in the middle of the ocean for hours and realizing, like, Jesus Christ, like, I do not want to do this forever. Like, it was
Mhm.
never even a question of this would be like a 20-year long thing for me. And I think taking in the information that I had at the time, it was, how are you going to be successful in life? And it was always, oh, you need to go to college and or grad school and then get a job. So that's what I did. I started taking classes while I was on the ship. I was on one of those big aircraft carriers, which is super cool. So I would go out with like small city size, like 6, 7,000 people with the squadron on
Nice.
there. And so I got out and went to college and started working a corporate job, then eventually went to grad school. And then during that journey of grad school, I realized, like, Jesus Christ, like, this is different than the military, but just different in the same way, right? Like, I have no control of my life. I don't get to choose when and where I spend my time. If I want to be successful, I'm going to have to go to where they want me to go. They're always dictating to me. And I
Mhm.
realized, like, all right, the only true option for me, one, to make any kind of real money and have control of my life, was to go the entrepreneurship route, right? The entrepreneur route. And real estate ultimately ended up being the best kind of case scenario for me, because I tried my hand in the stock market and realized real quick I was not Warren Buffett. I
Yep.
was stocks. I had no control over that. So I'm like, at least real estate, like, touch it, I could feel it. You have some level of control, and I just went all into that.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. We had some good friends of ours actually when we had been married a few years, and his family managed a mutual fund, like a publicly traded. They had a stock ticker, everything mutual fund, and he offered like, "Hey, I want he." There were some hobby things he wanted to learn how to do that I could teach him, like photography, gardening, some things like that. And he said, "How about we just barter?" Because I was really wanting to learn about the stock market, and so I would go, and he and his wife and my husband and I would sit around and we would do the thing while we talked about stocks. And his wife and my husband would just be like, "Oh my goodness, can we talk about anything else?" And he really spent a good amount of time with me teaching me, and I honestly just did not get it. And I don't think I wasted that opportunity. Sometimes knowing that something is not right for you, it's just as important as finding the thing. You got to go through some steps. So you try out the stock market. My grandpa actually, after he retired from the Air Force, really got into stock investing, and he did well. And between his 20-year his Air Force pension and his stocks, he lived pretty well. And that's how I learned really early on. Oh, stock market investing, that's where it's at, right? Because grandpa made $1 million, and now he lives off of his distributions. And so as a kid, being exposed to that, I thought, yeah, this is the way to go. And I think I chased that dog for too many years. So you found real estate a lot earlier than I did. We were making money off of our personal houses. I don't know why it took me so long to figure out how to do it with not our own house. So how did you fall into that? Was it this real estate is where I can make the most money, have the highest impact, or did you buy a book, a course? What put that idea in your head?
Yeah, yeah. So I think everybody finds it on their own track. I used to beat myself up, and this is funny with like college. I got
Yeah.
out of the military, I think at 23, 24-ish. I went right out of high school. And
Hmm.
I was sitting in class with 18-year-olds and thinking, I'm so much older, so much more mature. I had traveled around the world, and like, I just need to get this thing done. It felt like behind the curve. And I think a lot of people get into that space. So believe me, I think we all find stuff when it's the right time. But what ultimately drew me into real estate, I actually started off in multifamily. And I
Hmm.
learned, one, by the book, Cash Flow Quadrants. I still to this day haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad, but from all accounts,
Don't bother.
it's
I think.
It's like, you don't need Robert Kiyosaki now and stuff, but I tell you
Yeah.
what, that book changed my complete. And again, it's, you don't know what you don't know, right? No one
Yep.
taught me about what a true business owner is, or a true investor is, or a solopreneur is and stuff. And really just opened my eyes to this. Oh, you can do these things simultaneously. It's not like either or proposition.
Mhm.
So that's what ultimately opened my eyes to like real estate and just investing in general. And I tend to say, okay, if I'm going to do it, what's the best area to do it in? And I thought it was multifamily. So I signed up for a $20,000 mastermind and
Right.
went all in. And I don't regret it at all. Like, I got into a couple deals, but I quickly realized three things. So one, I'm a buy and hold guy. I think multifamily is great if, especially the larger syndications, if you want to get like a massive win, you hold
Yeah.
it 3, 4, 5, 7 years.
It's more of
And
a slow flip
it
than
is.
yeah.
It's not a cash flow game. And also too, selfishly, I didn't like being a tiny sliver of GP on a $40 million deal when I
Mhm.
could go buy a single family home myself and then rent it out. And obviously the cash flow on STR side came later, but that's how I went about. I was like, all right, let me see if I can try this model where I'm at. Start off with a triplex in West Palm Beach. Took the same kind of concept. All right, I'll have the two back kind of units rented out, and I'll try to put it on the Airbnb, VRBO, like short-term rental market. And it took off. And then I just from there, trial and error, pivoted everything into the short-term rental space.
Yeah, I did some similar experiments where I had some smaller multis that I owned by myself. And the very first apartment building that we looked at was one we were going to buy by ourselves. And it was I think a 14 unit. And the property manager that we were interviewing, he said, every bottom floor here should be turned into a short term rental because it's in a college town. So you got graduation coming in. And it's also cold during the winter. So we have a lot of people coming up during the summer who want to just stay here for 3 months. He said, I would furnish them an STR, all these. So put that idea in my head at the beginning. So when I bought my own small multi, I just converted one of the units just to see how it would go. And oh my, I hated it. It wasn't, I didn't have enough experience and the cash flow was enough that I could hire a manager. I'll just hire a manager to take care of this for me. I wanted to do it myself so I could really learn the business. And I just learned that I hate it. And so I did hire a manager and he did most of it for me, but it just wasn't enough to really feed him. And I shut it down. So I've tried to do, we've had a couple of short-term units over the years, and it's just not something that I love. And I think it was interesting what we're talking about at the beginning. It's like, how do you decide if you're going to do this as an active business versus just investing with somebody who's doing it for you? So that property manager, that short-term rental guy that I hired, he called me up one time after we had pulled the plug and he said, hey, I'm buying a new property. I need $50,000 or whatever he said to furnish it, get it all ready to go and all that. He's anybody who wants to invest. And so I hooked him up with a friend of mine who wanted to get in short-term rentals, but I was like, I'm not ever doing that again. And so he went in and just became like a silent partner, put in the
Yeah.
money for all the furnishings and everything. And they're doing a great little business together. So it ended up being a good experience overall. But I was just like, if I'd had the money at that point, I would have been like, I'll partner up with you and invest in one of your properties. So just tell the audience, like, how do you know without trying? Maybe because I had to learn by trying and failing. But how do you know by just your personality style, which direction you should go to? Should you do passive partner first, get a taste for it? How do you usually recommend people start to dip
Yeah.
their toe in this?
It's always boils down to like your personality, right? What kind of personality do you have? How much stress are you willing to deal with comfortably? Right? Because it can be
Because
a
it can
terrible.
get annoying. The hangers and the closets don't all match, is what I heard one time. I'm like, are you
Yeah.
serious?
If you're someone that is really bothered by the interaction or interface, especially at the beginning with other human beings and hearing, really trivial things that people get upset about and stuff, like, yeah,
Mhm.
it's probably not going to be for you. But for me, I love the idea of getting into something, one, that you can effectively do on your own, right? Like when I started this, like it went from a triplex to a single family to condos, and I was buying things in South Florida and really honing in what we were doing. And we can get into this later, but really it's about figuring out who your actual demographic is, who are you marketing towards and stuff, and then actually catering to those people that you're trying to bring in. But before that, I did the same thing. I was like, I'm not going to hire a property management company. I'm going to do this myself. I need to actually understand this business. I
Mhm.
just believe it. If you don't actually know how to manage something, like if you don't know how to do something, you can't manage.
Yeah.
It's just a fundamental truth. On top of the fact that most property management companies, sorry to be out there, are not very, and for no other reason, and it's the reason why I believe in ownership is that like when you don't have a stake in it, whether monetarily from sweat equity standpoint, like you're just less likely to do the things that are required when, especially when the extra mile is required. I think most property management companies, it's about volume, right? And that's fine. That's the name of their business. Yeah. So that's the one thing. But on the flip side of that, if you're looking for a way, and this is my pitch to people that think about getting into it, especially if you want to actively manage yourself, in my opinion, short-term rentals, if you want to be a millionaire, you're not a millionaire now. And this is where I became a quote unquote millionaire in real estate stuff is the short-term rental model in terms of if you want to get there the fastest way from a cash flow, appreciation standpoint, to me, short-term rentals will get you there faster than any other asset.
Yeah. The cash flow there, in the numbers can be really good. And that's where a lot of other types of investments fall down is they don't have cash flow. It's almost like building a house, nobody's living there. And then when it's done, now you can rent it out. But all that time that it's under construction, whether it's a flip or a new construction, whether it's a single family or an apartment building, if it's not up to its full income potential, there's just not going to be a lot of cash flow there. And so a lot of people
100%.
don't realize that. They think, oh, you own a bunch of apartment buildings. You must be so rich. I'm like, no, I get paid someday on that, like not today. And so it sounds like you figured that out
Exactly.
pretty
And
early
every
on.
thing that was like less appealing about multifamily. And again, I think you can make money in any type of real estate. But
Yeah.
then it goes
Oh,
back
yeah.
to what you said about your personality type. I was a guy that like I like it coming in fast, right? I like the excitement of it. I like the creativity of it. I love the ability to be able to like flex and pivot very easily because if what is it? If bookings are running slow, I could
Yeah.
try out a bunch of different things to see what I could do. And over time, that's turned into, oh, okay, like catering to a certain type of guest or going on PeerSpace. PeerSpace is a great platform that if somebody wants to book an event or do a guys or girls group or have a conference or something there, like you can put it on those platforms and really juice up your revenue in a lot of ways that most asset classes can't really do, at least not within a short period of time.
Yeah, you're definitely going to get higher returns if you're working. I tell my investors this all the time. Some of them want to go start their own real estate business. I don't do coaching for that, but we do have a free club that if they want that exposure, they can come hang out with us when we're doing our thing. But if they want to just be a limited partner, like when I invest money in something, even in my own deal, my money makes the same return as my investors' money does. I make more money overall because I'm also doing the work. So that's also called a job, right? And so separating that in my mind, like how much money am I going to make from the hustle, from the work part, and how much money am I going to make just because my money is invested? And those are two different categories. I think a lot of people aren't really thinking about that way. They think, oh, I'm just going to make more money if I own it myself and run it myself.
Yeah.
I will,
To your, what's more important to you, right? Because the cool thing about STRs is the way the tax code is written, and I'm sure about like auto rate appreciation, like bonus appreciation, like there is massive benefits in doing it yourself. And I'm
yeah,
telling, I'm not just upfront with people. I'm a guy that I started all buying it myself to syndicating to now I have a fund where we
with
raise
you.
money. We actually go out and buy boutique hotels, single family homes, ground development. But I tell people, you want the maximum benefit of this, like you need to do it yourself and be active investor. Because
Yep.
if you do it the right way, like you will not pay any taxes. And that's to me the goal, right? So what's more important to you? Getting a great return or actually doing it and mitigating like you have a W-2, especially guys that make a lot of money. And I come across a lot of that a lot, especially early on. I would do some JVs because guys were like, I don't really want to get into the nuts and bolts, but I want to learn and do a joint venture. But man, I would really like to get some of that depreciation. Something
Yeah.
like liability in my, oh, I can help you out. And I built the business now.
Yeah. And I love that you bring up the tax mitigation strategies because I feel like a lot of times investors will hear, oh, well, Donald Trump doesn't pay any taxes. And the Rich Dad Poor Dad says he doesn't ever pay any taxes. Well, I don't want to pay any taxes either. So they'll get into real estate thinking it's like some sort of a magic tax bullet, but
Oh,
there are different tiers of how to maximize that. So I love that if you're actively investing in your real estate professional, you get massive amounts of benefits from that, but only if you have active income. That was one thing when my husband left his job and we had no more active income. It was all passive. It's we don't really care about real estate professional status anymore because we only have passive income, and the only benefit of real estate professional is taking the depreciation off your active income. So we're like, oh, I don't need that anymore. But then we started looking at short-term rentals again because they've got some really crazy loopholes, at least for the time being. So can you explain that to the listener? Because every time I hear about it, because I'm not doing short-term rentals anymore, I forget. So can you explain like why short-term rentals are a little bit different in the way that income is taxed at the lower rate than you would see with just like a long-term rental?
That's a great question. I wish I had a good answer for that. I am not a CPA. My CPA could tell you really well. It's funny, actually, it's not even my CPA. It's my cost segregation guy. So
Yes.
every time we buy, for whatever reason, and I guess I think it came down to the IRS never really thought this was going to be something that was institutionalized largely. So we're benefiting from something that was just written in a way that, oh, if you're just doing this on the side, we're going to help you out.
Hmm.
Really, we go into if you buy, we can just accelerate depreciation when like your washer and dryer, and they single itemize everything that allows you to really erode all of your tax burden, i.e. accelerate it in that first year. I'm butchering it right now.
Yeah.
All I know, I get a massive benefit from it and stuff. And that's why it's really beneficial using that versus a long term. I don't even know what the accelerated depreciation is for a long term, because I only do
Yeah.
short term.
Oh, yeah, and it's different, like, we have an RV park where it has a massive amount of depreciation, accelerated depreciation, and I couldn't figure out why, because it's the infrastructure underneath, so the pipes, the electrical,
Yep.
that's actually accelerated more quickly, so you have that 27.5 years or
And
whatever
a
that
half
everybody
years.
talks
Yeah.
about, but on the underground, this is why you wanna do cost segregation because different parts of the building
Yep.
are accelerated or depreciated over different periods of time. And so in an RV park, it's mostly underground infrastructure is depreciated. I think it's like a 16-year schedule. So that's a big difference. You're going to get a lot more of that depreciation up front because that stuff is on a different schedule. But if you just do straight line, everything's 27 years. Carpet's 27 years. And so you're
Yep.
getting pennies for it before you have to replace the carpet. And I know there's something about short-term rentals is you actually have to be doing it like as your own job or something. And so that's why self-managing short-term rentals have extra benefits that I forget about, but
I believe so. Don't know the rules there too. I make it a habit of putting people that really know what they're doing and allowing them to do that. And I focus on what I'm good at. And it actually takes me back to investing in the stock market because now we have a wealth manager, my wife, and I'm like, all
Mm,
right, we need to take this money and actually invest it in like the market and all that. And so like you guys do it, like let's roll. But to answer your question before, that's the cool thing about all that stuff with the depreciation is that you can really, as long as you continue to buy, like you can really mitigate a lot of your active income. But
yeah,
the thing is that people get tripped up on if you're not, if this isn't something you're going to continue to do, in fairness, you need to try first, right? Like I'm
yeah,
asking, at least try it. If you sell it, you have to recoup that. So just make sure that if you go and buy 3 properties, you have your cost seg guy, you like mitigate your taxes and stuff. If you sell it 2 years from now, that's recoup. And I'm a buy and hold guy. So I'm riding this stuff to the wheels fall. So
yeah. And it's interesting the point that you bring up about finding experts and specialists because that allows you to be the short-term rental specialist. It allows me to be like the multifamily, and we do a lot of private lending as well. I figure I can do both of those almost evenly. And then I don't do the taxes. Like I have to hire people for that. And so at the beginning of a business, you probably didn't have a wealth manager when you first
well,
started because you can't afford it, the business doesn't support it, whatever, but as you build, you bring on more specialists, and so how has that changed the way you do business, being able to hire people, being able to just bring more specialists on board, and that has allowed you to niche down more? What do you really like? What's your what's your core competency now? You probably did everything at the beginning and you keep
of course. But that's what you learn, right? Like you have to know a little bit about a whole lot of things until you can really focus. I think now it's put me in a spot if you want to talk about like life by design. Like I got into this real estate just in general, but even short-term rentals. My goal was never to build some Fortune 500 or 100 company. It was really about like creating a vehicle that it is a business, but that's self-staying business. Like I said, we were just in vacation or now my real role as the face of the company is I raise money. I information out about the benefits of short-term rentals from a passive investing standpoint. So I was just in Cuba, which is super cool. I locked in with a guy that does these really cool experiences where he takes sponsors out and family offices and RA groups. And I get to go and spend time mingling with folks in cool countries. I spoke in Bogota, Colombia, never been there before. So that's really what I do now. And I have my property management company or my CUO in place where really the day-to-day operations isn't something that like I'm super into. It's something that
yeah.
I'm aware of and I check in, but It's about just kind of growing the brand, and the portfolio is largely what I do now, which the part that I enjoy the most about, I love the shit. I
Yeah.
don't know if you can tell or not, but I do. It's given me an incredible life. Like, and like from where I come from to where I'm literally building a house now, pool coming in, basketball court. I like to think that like I knew I was going to do something, but never in my wildest dreams that I think I'd be in, Jupiter, Florida, living the life that I live. And it's amazing.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are just too afraid to think that this stuff is real, that they can have a house with a basketball court and a pool and do live in wherever they want to. They hear about it, but they're afraid to believe that it might be true. And so they sometimes are like, oh, that's for superstars. And I think that's one thing I really like about this business is there's room for anybody. It's not a zero sum thing. It's
Yeah.
if you came to me and you said, hey, I'm in the NBA, I'm going to tell you everything I know about how to get into the NBA. And I did everything exactly like you told me, I probably would still get into the NBA.
Me
And so,
neither.
yeah, but this is a formula that if you just follow the formula, you can perform at a really high level and amass an amazing amount of wealth, depending on how far you choose to take it. I just don't feel like that there are the same kind of barriers that you have. You don't have to have a personal brand where people think I'm charismatic and like me. I don't have to have millions of dollars of my own. Like it's just there's so many points of entry. I don't know. Is that something that you've noticed as well? Like you can just
100% is
just
the German for it. Like, I like 100%. Like, I've met guys in real estate, and this is the beautiful part about it. And some people could take it negatively. I think it's a positive that, like, some of the most successful guys I know in real estate didn't go to college, didn't go to grad school, barely got out of high school and stuff.
yeah.
And it is a game to me of consistency, self belief. Like, it is a mindset business because
Yeah.
most people get deterred because they're scared of doing a bad deal or just getting started. They're scared of going out and talking to people about it because they're worried about what other people think and stuff. Fortunately for me, I don't care about either. It's, oh, I want to do this. I'm going to talk to people about it. And I was talking to people about what I wanted to do well before I even bought my first property because I realized that this is an area that anybody can win in. I couldn't have said it better than what you just said. It is a space truly of consistency and just resilience. And you're going to get punched in the face. So what? As long as you make that disconnection between like failure and who you are, like that's going to happen. Everybody goes through it. But if you can push past it, learn from it, and continue to learn, it is by far one of the best ways to build wealth, build a nest egg. Even for an average person that's just working a W-2 job and stuff, you try to buy a house and rent it long term every 2, 3 years, you don't need a 401k. Like, you don't need any of that stuff. Like, you can live the rest of your life off the
Yep.
cash flow from the houses, from the appreciation that's going to go from a natural standpoint. I believe in force appreciation, but that is the beauty of real estate. And they don't make more land. So if you have the benefit of that, people are always going to need a place.
Yeah, let's take the gym analogy that you made earlier. Like, I feel like everybody can go to the gym and perform at their current level, no matter where they are in their fitness journey. And the gym is big enough to fit anybody who wants to show up and run on a treadmill or throw some weight around. And I think that's one thing I really love about physical fitness is because it's a game of mindset and it's a game of consistency and it's a game that everybody can win at if they just stay consistent. And real estate speaks to me in the same kind of way as a fitness and nutrition does.
10%. I think it's the perfect analogy to it. And I learned that early on. It's if you go, you do it every single day, no matter who you are, if you go to the gym one time and bust your ass, let's say for 10 hours in the gym, you are not going to let you bust and like shirt off, ready for the world. It takes time who you are. And this game is just like that. It takes time of just consistently chipping away. But at some point, you see the result and it should motivate you to go further. And that's generally how it goes.
Yeah, and I love the analogy too. It's like there's no way that you can go to the gym long enough that you don't have to go back tomorrow. There's no way that you can eat enough at this meal that you will never need to eat again. It's just one of those things where you just understand that it's drop by drop. And so that's one thing that appeals to me about your story in particular is you started out and you're just like, okay, what's the next best thing that I should be doing? And you're going to continue to hone down as time goes by and maybe pivot. Maybe they'll change the tax law. Maybe they'll change the zoning. Like your ability to say like, all right, so I'll just pivot. I'll just figure out the
Or even
next
something
thing.
else and stuff. It's not that serious, right? I just think it's okay. Fire, we'll do something else and stuff. I know I don't take life seriously, but I think we're all here to enjoy this thing. And it doesn't need to be real estate. Find something you enjoy doing or learn to enjoy it. Like I didn't enjoy underwriting deals. And stuff. I still don't love it, but I absolutely love putting a property together, seeing the final product, getting that person
Mhm.
in there, and more than anything else, seeing the cash flow at the end of the month. Like that
Yes.
motivates me. When I say, okay, man, how can we increase this? How can we decrease the cost? And it's there will be things that suck and there are things that are amazing. Focus on the things that are incredible, that are motivating to you, that makes you want.
Yeah. Like an 80/20. It's 80% of what I'm doing I like, and I'll take the other 20% that I don't like because that's part of it. And just understanding if you're going after it that way. I don't love underwriting deals either. I forced myself to learn how to do it. Now I can do it, but it's just a really important skill that I had to have. But at no point did I ever think I'm going to become a underwriting genius and I'm going to
Yeah,
teach
there you go.
classes on this. Like
That's
it's
actually a very
not.
respectable breed and stuff for sure. Whereas I
Yeah.
didn't love public speaking and all that. So now I actually enjoy it. Like I love talking about real estate and mindset. And I just think as many people that, even if I only affect one person that gets enough self-belief in themselves to say, hey, I can change my circumstance in life. Like to me, that's incredible because there are so many people I think that are really unhappy because they're just not fulfilled and like actually going. And I think
Mhm.
is all human beings, male, women, all need to be like reaching for something to find some kind of level of fulfillment. And that's going to be different for everybody else. But I just think that people would be much more happy in life and not focusing on the news cycle and social media if like we're actually chasing after something. And there's a pleasure.
Yeah, I agree. And as we've left corporate and retired, it's true what they say. You do have to find a new purpose. We've spent a lot of time just looking at each other. What are we doing? What's next? What really moves us? What's our mission? What's our passion? Like, how are we going to do this next phase of our lives? And passive income has given us the freedom of the time to be able to do that, but it doesn't make the process go away. It just means that we don't have to worry about how we're going to pay the bills while we do it. So I definitely
This
think
is a
that
good thing not to worry about for sure. Like a lot of
is a
people
good
stay around
problem.
this situation. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
That's a
It
beautiful thing.
but that's why we started this show. I started this podcast, like, within weeks of my husband leaving his job, and I said, "I wanna tell the story of passive income and the adventures you can go on, and the real story as we were doing it, because those first couple years, they're rough because 'cause you're trying to figure out
Yeah.
your life, your income gets really irregular, and you're just trying to figure out how to make it all work, and I just wanted to bring the listeners along for the journey and talk to other people who are experiencing the same or different things because everybody's gonna be a little bit different. So that's the whole point of the show is like, what does this actually look like? And so one thing that I've noticed I get to do, my husband told me recently, he edits a podcast and he said, honey, are you depressed? I like, what? What do you mean? He goes, on the podcast, you're sounding depressed. And I said, really? What is giving you that impression? He said, you're just talking about all the time about how hard this business is and how much it sucks. And I'm like, honey, I'm trying to attract passive investors. I am not out there to tell everybody like, yeah, you should have a real estate business. It's the most wonderful thing. We don't need doctors. We don't need teachers. Everybody should just be a
Right.
real estate investor. That is
That's it.
not the message I'm giving. Is go be a great doctor. Go be a great teacher. I will take on the sucky part of real estate so that you can invest. But you're actually on both sides where you coach people how to do this as a new job, a career, but you're also attracting LP capital. So I just talk about like how hard this is, how much it sucks. But you get to talk about, like, how great it is and whichever bucket they fall into is the bucket that they fall into.
Yeah, because like for me, it's just a matter of what is the best fit for you. And I
Mhm.
think there is a lot of messaging out there of real estate is amazing, which it is, but that everybody should be a real estate investor. And really, most people should, right? Most people shouldn't be an entrepreneur. Not everybody's wired that way. Not
Yeah.
everybody's wired for the level of stress, the level of commitment it takes, because you might think your 9 to 5 job far if it's hard, but either building a business or always being on to something like there's no moment where now I still go overseas and we travel and all that, but I'm still a part of it. You know, I love it, but this is my responsibility, especially when you're talking about like syndications and all that. Like I have a duty to my investors, but there's a real value in being able to now go out and talk to people and say, hey, maybe you should just passively invest in syndication or do a JV because your current situation makes sense. Or no, like you actually could get massive value about doing it yourself. And so I get to talk to both those messages. And it just really just depends on the individual that I'm speaking.
Yeah, how do you find when you're let's just call it lead generation, when people come into your funnel and you're trying to figure out, would this be more of a passive, like a limited partner in my fund, or does this person actually wanna go out and do this? Are more people coming into your funnel interested in doing this as their own business, like getting a few of their own rentals, or more of them, you handle that headache. I just want to invest passively. Because for me, I'll tell you, it's 80% people who want to do real estate on their own and maybe 20% who want to LP. And my whole business focuses on that 20%. And the 80%, I'm like, well, I got a free club on Monday nights if you want to come, but I don't have a product for you. I don't have anything to sell you. You can just come join in. So are you finding that to be a similar ratio of active to passive?
Yeah, I think definitely more people that are looking for a change tend to be the ones that raise their hand the fastest or the loudest. But I think it's just always an education piece, right? So I'm fighting two things. Like, I really talk about short-term rentals, and we didn't get deep into it. We really don't need to, but like how this game of short-term rentals is so much bigger than just Airbnb. Like, even
Mhm.
real estate investors, I say STR or short-term rentals, they don't really know what I'm saying, but they always go, "Oh, Airbnb," and I'm like, "Yes, it's that, but
It's-
all these other things, right? Anything that's not being leased up, in my opinion, a year is I consider short-term rental. So my strategy is a combination of all of these. So I fight against that explanation. But then what is a syndication or a fund or doing a joint venture? So a lot of people just don't have this information. So I think it's great for people like you that are getting that out there in podcast form, in newsletters and stuff. So there are people out there that want to invest passively, but really don't know what that looks like or it's
Mhm.
even an option. So we almost have to arrive there. So I do get a lot of people that think they want to do it on their own, but
Mhm.
then realize, oh, actually, I just
Yeah.
want to invest passively. And then
Right.
that's where to get the check, but not do the work. So it's helpful having both.
Yeah. Yeah, being willing to do the work and make the money means that you get to choose how you spend your time, and then your money can be doing something else. We don't always have to be pouring all our own money back into our own business. In fact, it's probably not a good idea if we do. So no matter what we specialize in, we have to go out and find experts to be able to passively invest because I want a diversified portfolio, which
Yeah.
means I can't be an expert in all the things. And so I look for people who are going to bring an asset class to me that I'm never going to touch. Like we've got an RV park and I think it has 4 spaces that are for short term and the rest of
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
long term. People who live there, it's like their vacation home. And oh man, I just managing even just those 4, and I don't even do it. Like, I don't even do it. But it's just, they
I'll send
just
you
have
my
so many
syndicate. I'll send you my
roles.
fund out. So we'll get you exposed to the work that you're doing the work and stuff. But yeah, it is one of those things, like, you have to have the personality for it. Even, like, mobile home park, right? Like, I think you have to be cut from a certain cloth, to deal with. Especially we were talking about, like, there are some higher end parks that some people are aware of, most people aren't. But, like, you wanna talk about that mid-tier or lower end, like, you need
Yeah.
to understand the language, the culture, like, it's a completely different thing. And
Yeah.
not everybody's suited to do that. So you're better off just putting your money into somebody that's actually handling that, you trying to earn that space.
Yeah, definitely. And it has been a real culture shock more than any other property that I've ever been
Yeah,
involved in.
it's a different breed for
Different,
sure.
yeah, different type of lifestyle, different choices where they they call them at our park, they call themselves the fishing folk, which I think is so cute because it's on a big fishing lake. And this is just the way that we want to spend our retirement. And one of the tenants told me one night, she said, "You just don't get it, do you?" I'm like, "Probably not. Tell me, explain this to me." I love that there are people out there that are doing this. So tell me a little bit more about what you do with the fund. What are you currently at right now? And describe like the kind of person who can benefit most from. I always ask at the end of every show, like, how do people get a hold of you? But most importantly, why should people get a hold of you? So give this that question is instead of just being at the end like it normally is, give it a minute now to just describe the kinds of people that you help that might be listening to this show.
Yeah, so really we focus in on, like, high income earners that want to diversify, want some more exposure to cash flow. Like, we really focus in on cash flow as our kind of
Mhm.
main vehicle that separates us from other types of real estate. But we do a lot of force appreciation value add on our single family home. So I think what a lot of commercial folks don't love about single family, the appraisal kind of process, I really
Mhm.
like, because it allows me to go into markets with really high levels of certainty that if I do X, Y, and Z to a property, sinks and run increases,
You
cool, that, like, I'm going to be able to force appreciate that property. And when you consolidate with a lot of other properties, like you get a massive amount of like equity creation from the very beginning. So generally you're going to get the cash flow on the front end, but then on the back end, you're going to participate in that equity creation as well. But we also really honed in on partnering with RIA groups and family offices that really understand the thesis and the models. I'm actually not on the beat looking for retail investors as much anymore, which ironically helps out because whether you're desperate or not, when you're raising money, sometimes people can think you're desperate just because you're like, hey, this is amazing. Where it's now, it's, hey, bro, you want to invest or not? If you don't want
Yeah.
to, it's fine. It doesn't matter. We're getting a check for $3 million. We're going to keep trucking. So it actually benefits me a lot more because now we have a product that like I believe in and I think is an awesome vehicle for folks. And they participate if they want to. If not, all great, man. Keep living your life.
Yeah. And tell me about your community that you're building for investors to. I always say if you want to be passive, you need to still join a community because it's private equity. It's not as easy as just opening up a Robinhood account. Like you have to understand the asset class. There's a little learning that goes in. So doing some sort of a coaching program, even as a limited partner, is always a good idea because we all kind of start in the same place. And the limited partner is going to learn this much and the operator is going to learn this much. So tell me about the community that you're building and the kind of people who tend to gravitate towards that.
Yeah, and that actually is the value of the community, which is actually cool now because we actually just rolled out like an app. So it's called the STR Millionaires app. So you can actually download the app on your phone. I really want to consolidate everything. So it's like module classes. So really that walks you through every single point of the process. So from like how do we identify like a market? Like what makes a market good? Like what are the types of assets that we look at within a market? Like how to underwrite it. And we go through all of those steps. And for me, it is that education process. It's constantly providing value of what are the good and the bad parts of kind of the STR space, what's coming in the future, where to find opportunities. And we get those people that come in that just want to learn or actually really want to put the effort in and just be as informed as possible. And I tell people you'll never know everything to jump, but at least go to somebody's community that you actually like and respect, right? That's how I look at these things. I don't think anyone's doing anything from a community standpoint that's like revolutionary. Hell, you could chat GPT most shit out, right? No one's given any real information that isn't out there. But what I do say is that, and this is how I ended up, I joined 2 masterminds like early on in my career, is that there are people that you either connect with, that you like them from a value standpoint, energetically, but there are also people that the way they describe a thing or an experience or a procedure, it's going to make sense for you. And I realized that there was something that, oh man, because my wife, she's absolutely incredible. She built an amazing coaching business online, and she was the impetus for me starting it. She was saying, I got into marketing. So I was like anti-social media guy forever. I wish I would have just jumped in, but I was like, people don't care what I got going on. I was military and I'm like, mind my business. Now I'm all in 100% because I see the value of number one, meeting people and learning, but also too, like giving people exposure to what I'm doing. But like the biggest thing is that there's somebody who was like Ramazi or something like that.
Yeah.
I would hear him say stuff, and then there was somebody else that said something very similar, but it just split. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense to me. So you get exposure to people that actually will explain something in a way that it just resonates with you. And that's the person that you probably should learn or at least get
Agree.
value. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Oh,
You know,
yeah, because I just do here's the Rich Dad Poor Dad why I think don't bother reading it is because when I read it, I didn't have any moments where I was like, "Oh, wow, like, this is changing my I can't believe it. I've never thought about something like this before." It was basically like, go buy real estate, get a mortgage for it, and make sure that it cash flows. I was like, yeah, duh. Doesn't
life
everybody just
changing stuff.
agree?" I remember sitting around in high school and being like, "The trick is to make $1,000,000 in the stock market and just live off the distributions." Like, I grew up in the suburbs, like, we had parents who knew what they were doing financially, it's so, like, we were exposed to that, I just didn't think it was earth-shattering, but then I'll read a book that I'm like, "Wow, that is amazing," because that person probably went through that thing themselves, that's why they're an expert at it now, and I'm reading a book now, it's called Every Family's Business, and the prologue, it says, "I believe that people who write books are trying to convince themselves, the author is trying to convince himself of the thing more than the reader." And so that really, I felt like that's true
That's
because
interesting for sure.
that person probably struggled with that, learned about it, and now they have something to offer and teach. And so I really do resonate with people when it sounds ridiculous when they're more similar to the types of thought breakthroughs that they've had. And I'm like having that breakthrough because they're explaining it to me in a way that I've never thought about it like that before. And other books just, they just fall flat because you already know how to do that thing. And
Yeah,
you'd like to
yeah,
do the same.
that makes perfect sense, and it's funny because there's it's such an interesting thing because so we actually started a foundation. I don't know if I mentioned that to you or not, my wife and I. And yeah, one of the things that we really feel strongly about is financial education and literacy for people that need it that don't have it. And as we started our nonprofit, we actually just launched it when we were in Italy, and it's super cool. But it's like the stuff that you said you just knew that you knew like most people don't, or a lot of people do not have that education at all. They don't teach you at schools. They get throughout most of their life and having to either go search for it and find it or get the wrong information. And so we're a huge, like actually trying to help caregivers and parents give that to their kids while they're at home. Because I talk to my kids, I have 4 kids about money, investing and all that. But ironically, I've had guys that invest with me that come from upper middle class backgrounds. Parents are doctors, lawyers, and they don't know shit about money, right? Because it comes
True.
from the house. And that's just one of those things. And I always joke that we're still out here teaching Pythagorean theorem in school and stuff like that. I've yet to use that shit one time in my life. Like we don't teach kids on what credit scores are, how to build credit, like how to leverage that. Things I think are really important and
Yeah.
nowhere found in any of our education. I just think that's free. So that's what our foundation is built on. And that's something I'm super excited about as we move forward because there are a lot of people like you that know some of this stuff. There are a lot of people I can tell you that have no clue. And that's what we're
Yeah.
passionate.
And I don't necessarily want it being taught in schools because of public school teachers teaching our kids about financial education. They're not taking that first
The next thing.
themselves. But
Sure.
I think where my entrepreneurial bug actually got lit was in 8th grade, and I was doing a program at the public school, and I cannot remember the name of it. And people out there probably yelling at me. It's a very famous program, like the DARE program for Don't Do Drugs. It was Junior Business Academy or Young Business something like that. It was a green with the little triangle. And one of my public school teachers was very wealthy and he was teaching because he just loved teaching and brought this program. He was a new teacher at our school and brought this program in and taught it to us. And that was the most applicable thing I'd ever learned in school to make money. Cause I'm like, we're all here for career training. Like none of us are here because we're just like want at this as a hobby. I guess some people do, but that was basically the message. Like, you're here learning to get an education, so it's an economic thing. And I was like, oh, okay. So this junior business, whatever, was and it lit this entrepreneurial fire in me, and I can directly attribute it to
And I
that
agree. See how
specifically.
powerful that is though? And
Mhm.
how many teachers are there out there that are independently wealthy? They're just teaching in their free time.
Yeah.
Very few. But think about how much of an impact that had that you even still remember that to this day.
Can't remember the
It,
name, but I
but look,
remember the teacher.
that's super, super powerful stuff. And it's like, man, would I have loved to just know a little bit of this stuff back then? It could have changed the complete trajectory of my life or somebody else's life. It may not have affected me, right? It might have went in one ear, out the other. I was very
Mhm.
hard headed. I probably wouldn't listen to you. But and that's why I think it's so powerful. And that's really cool to hear you even say something like that because it's just something that you're right. Most schools probably shouldn't be teaching it. But
Yes.
for the people that actually could get exposed to it early, like how much of an impact it could have on their future, I think is
Yeah. It can be a huge difference. And sometimes as a foundation founder, you probably know if we could just change a couple of kids' lives, then it will be worth it. And I think that's what we're doing. Okay, so we already asked people why they should get a hold of you. Tell people real quick how they can get a hold of you. And then I have a bonus question for our active investors after that. So usually this part of the podcast, they're like, oh, it's winding down. I'm going to jump out. I don't need to listen to this part. But we got the bonus question coming up after. So you have to stick around till the end.
that's great marketing right there. I respect it. Yeah, but if you could, I'm all over the place. So like LinkedIn, Instagram, Justin C. Mosley, and then also STR Millionaires is our website for education and listed more capital. You probably would not be able to spell it. It's behind me, but I'm sure if you have show notes or something, go ahead and throw it in there.
Yeah, we're going with Lester Moore, right? Is that right?
So here's less more. Actually, I changed it. It's lmcstr.com. I'll tell you a quick story about that. So I met my wife in Tampa when I was back in corporate and I met her. She walked into the boardroom. We were working for this corporate retail company. There's no chance that she works here. She sat next to me, absolutely beautiful. And she did. So immediately fell in love. So I told you how I didn't want to get married before that. I knew I wasn't married as soon as I met her. So we started dating and she was like, hey man, take it easy. I have to go back to my country. She's English. They sent her over here to grow the business. But so when it was time for her to go, quit my job, moved over to England. She did not believe I was going to go. I did. It wasn't until I got off the plane that she actually believed that I was coming. Went to grad school over there in England. So when it was time to make a business, I'm from Baltimore. She's from Leicester and Leicester More Cap.
Okay, yes, that makes sense. Yeah, that's a great story too. My mom was raised in England in the Air Force. So her parents are American, but my grandfather actually flew in the RAF during World War II because the United States wasn't in the war. And so they recruited an American squadron to go fly in
They
the RAF. Yeah, so the Eagle Squadron, I think it was called, and there's in Grosvenor Square, there's a monument to this squadron that has his name on it. And I've never been to England, so it's on my bucket list to go and
You
get
got
a
to
run,
check that out.
dinner.
That's good
Yeah,
enough reason right there to go check it out. Yeah.
yeah,
England's
definitely. No, that's the kind of stuff we get to do when we stop thinking about how am I going to keep the lights on and more like, how do I want to live my life? So I love that story. It shows the spontaneity of nature, but also the planning that goes behind being spontaneous. So,
I
yeah.
think it speaks to like when you actually want something, because in her mind, she was like, there's no chance that he's going to quit his job. But when you actually put on the mindset of like, how can I find a solution? It becomes super easy. It's apply to school, out of the VA loan, go to grad school. So time, all these things fall in place. We focus in on the solution. At least that's how I believe. That's how I like to live
Exactly.
my life. And it's true to me. We're still married. So we're going
Yes.
through.
Congratulations. All right. Here is a bonus question for the active investor. It's about institutional capital and family office money versus retail money. And so when we did the biggest project we've ever done, it had to have institutional capital because it was such a big raise. Like at a certain point, past about $20 million in a
All right.
year's period, you're not doing retail, right? You've got to go institutional. I think this project, by the time all was said and done, I'd have to go back and look at my docs, but it was somewhere in the $35 million raise. And so we just were like, we're not even going to try with retail capital. We're just going to go after the family offices. And it was rough, and people think, "Oh, they're gonna write me a bigger check," but at the same time, like, there's so many hoops you have to jump through, and I'll just give you a couple of mine, and then you tell me how you cracked that nut, because a lot of people listening think that institutional capital gonna write them a $3 million, $5 million, $10 million check means that their problems are solved, and it's just not the way that it is. So when we first started trying, they were like, "How many deals has your team done together?" I'm like, "What was our first deal together?" Like, deal breaker, like are the way that we have our fund written or the way that our family charter is written, like we cannot do a deal with somebody that's the first time together as a team. And then other people said, I need at least 10% of the equity coming from the GP. On a project that's still, you would have had to bring in like just a rich guy who wasn't doing anything else just to put that money in. Some of them even said 20% of the GP. Another thing that we ran into was the integrated property management. Some of them wanted us to be full time and they didn't even want us to be having like a nonprofit or anything on the side or part time. We had to be full time Chick-fil-A. Like you do Chick-fil-A, that's it. So, what kind of hoops have you had to jump through for institutional capital? What problems has it solved and what problems has it not solved?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've heard literally all those different propositions. So I haven't worked with all of them, but same deal, right? So you need 10%, but then it's okay, then we can raise 10% retail, right? Or bring somebody in that's going to put that money in. We've done that before. One of the things that we've done, I look at it as pick your poison, right? The
Yeah.
beauty of retail capital is that pretty much, especially if you get a relatively sophisticated investor or high net worth. I've gotten the check from 250 and I never hear from them. I send them an email. They get the
Mhm.
distribution. They're good to go. Don't ever raise less than $50,000 because whatever reason, like for people to come check on that, like $10,000 every other week is just absurd.
Yes.
Never go to that level. But so that's the power of retail, right? You're generally going to get less pushback, less questions outside of the learning side. What I've seen from family offices, they tend to have a really high criteria on the type of investment. They want to do massive due diligence. What we've done to overcome that is go with third-party due diligence. So there, you got like a fact right out there. We actually went with McLaw, which I think is actually a better route because it's really just a legal opinion. And
Mhm.
what we find, especially with RIAs, like they just want to make sure that they are buttoned up on the legal side. So if anything does happen,
Mhm.
they're not liable, or at least they can say, hey, it's all about the pointy finger game. We checked it with these guys and they said it was good. Our kind of solve for that is to go the RIA route. And for anyone that doesn't know RIA, it's like a registered independent or independent advisor.
Registered investment advisor.
Investment advisor. Shit.
We're
Yeah.
independently licensed by FINRA, but they have their own firm and they
Yeah. They're
charge
real,
per the hour. They get a commission on the.
yeah, and they truly manage 100 million plus in assets and stuff,
Mm.
but they have a lot more discretion and they actually come in as LP cap. So if you're
Mhm.
looking for a route to where you're just looking for that LP capital, they're a great way to get in. Now it's super challenging. This is why I'm flying across the world, mingling with these guys because it's
Yeah.
very relationship driven. But if you can get in, it's a great way to solve your seed capital. And we do a hybrid, right? You get that first 2, 3, 5 million in, and it becomes a lot easier to get money from other RA groups and stuff. I don't go private equity. I tried to go that, and it was almost impossible. Like they want a
Yes.
piece, they want control, and for me, I'm in this game because I want to control my destiny and not be dictated to.
Yeah. They can be kind of bossy. And one of the things I did not like, this has nothing to do with money. This is just like you said, it's very relationship driven. Is most of the groups that we would talk to are either the project is too small, we don't write checks that small. But even those who ended up saying, yeah, we don't normally write checks this small, but we like this project, so we'll look at it, would then say things like, we don't normally write checks this small, but we're willing to look at it. And just thinking of the attitude was like, I actually just don't like you. And so you better be writing a big check because I don't think I want to work with you for the next 5 years. So there has to be a personality mesh as well, where they're seeing that you're bringing some value to the table and it has to be a relationship. So if somebody wants to get started down that route of going after some more institutional capital and they've never done it before, maybe they raise some retail stuff, where would the first place be that they should start building those relationships? Like, where do they meet those people? How do you
You
know?
know, so I actually started off with a broker dealer type. He wasn't technically a broker dealer, but like building
Mhm.
relationships, paid a
Mhm.
lot of money. I would do it all over again and stuff like that. That game, in my opinion, what I've seen is very relationship driven. So if you're somebody that likes to get out, mingle, talk to people, confident in what you're doing, and can articulate your vision very well, I think it's well worth accelerating that by like actually paying. Like you got to pay to play sometime, right? And I think it's a great way. Going to these conferences and stuff are cool. I generally stay away from them. They tend to be very transactional. And I don't like to go to places where, sponsors are effectively like jumping at people, quote unquote, have money. Even those family office events, I don't know if you've been to one, but
Is
I've
this?
talked to family offices now that are like, we don't actually even go to those things. Like it's just a pitch party for a sponsor. Yeah, that's probably the best advice I would have for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Hopefully, that bonus little question that you all stuck around for afterwards was beneficial because this is a little bit longer, even podcast than we normally go. So, thank you, Justin, for
Fair,
coming
yeah,
on.
I appreciate that. I'm gonna take that as a compliment that now I wasn't terribly boring. You weren't ready to, all right.
Yeah, hopefully people getting some good value out of this. I like just have real conversations with real people who are doing the things. If you want to get a hold of Justin, you know how to do. If you want to get a hold of me, investwithemma.com and Rise Club Capital if you want to come to our free Monday night meetings. And if you're looking for retail capital, would love to have you come and pitch a deal to our group. So they show up to be pitched. It's like an angel investor group. So we welcome that. Being just getting some better deal flow and finding places to put our money. And if you want to be a limited partner or a joint venture partner, like we were saying, those are the kind of places like Justin's coaching program, his community that he's doing, our free community that we have is where you go and just start learning. You're going to be probably drinking from a fire hose. We don't curate ours like lesson one. It says it's just like jump in and just get the work done. It's like a war room in there. So
Well,
it's a great place to just, you want to know where to network, you want to find out, just reach out, start talking to people. And if we can help you, we can direct you to somebody who has, because this business is about networking. You don't get anything done without being a really great networker. So we appreciate you taking your time to network with us. And we actually would love to hear from you after the show so you can tell us about all of your passive income goals and dreams and the adventures that you want to go on. And we will do our best to help you with that. So thank you so much again, Justin, for speaking with us today.
awesome. Happy to be here.
All right. Have a good one. See you next week.